the YouTube link will probably be the easiest one
here. Yeah. Just right from YouTube? Right for YouTube?
Yeah, got it now. It should be there now. Get her?
Just about.
You good to go?
Yeah, just sending it off now.
Perfect. A well-oiled machine. It's a great podcast space you got there, interview space.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, after years, I finally just decided to class up and, get something that looked half decent.
This is just a green sheet hanging on a wall, and then we put whatever we want.
It looks like you are, Divine Birth Central over there.
I was telling Darren, I think we're in the ovaries.
I'm in an ovary.
Yeah, you're right in the ovaries. Both your heads. Yeah, that's a good place to be.
Story of my life. Yeah.
Story of your life. Oh, God. That sounds like a long story. That's funny.
All right, we're ready to go here.
I'm ready to go. You ready?
Yep. All right, we got a special.
Wait, I didn't hit record yet.
Okay, sorry.
I tell you when to
go. All right, we got a special episode tonight about the miraculous conception. We have Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso, PhD, with us. She's the director of her own esoteric school, the Seven Sisters Mystery School. And her most recent book, among many others, is The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Graham and Darren.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this. It's a great book, and because we've been talking about ancient mythologies and mysteries and religions always in there, and this is a great little complement to a bunch of the episodes we've been doing recently. It's just something I've never really thought too much about, so it really got my mind going here.
Thanks for your engagement with it. It's always exciting when somebody's interested in the subject matter.
Yes, for sure. So, you've written books on a little bit of this before. Do you want to start on why you decided to write this book?
Yeah, I have these two previous books are called The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece, and the second one is called Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity. And those basically are the rollout of my doctoral dissertation from the California Institute of Integral Studies into books that are very scholarly with Palgrave Macmillan. Still readable, though, and they lay out the whole idea that virgin birth was an actual real thing that high-level priestesses were doing in ancient Greece. So, of course, while I was starting the research, right away you're thinking about Mother Mary, even though I didn't start out thinking about Mother Mary. I started out thinking about Greek priestesses, and I wanted to do all sorts of explorations about them. But then I had this intuitional downpour that said, hey, Greek priestesses were actually doing divine birth. And so I started looking at all the references to Greek priestesses, I found a ton of evidence to support that idea. So, of course, right away I started thinking, wow, Mother Mary wasn't alone. She had precedents, women who were all over the ancient Mediterranean world and really beyond to the whole entire globe. And it was able, by doing this research, I was able to situate Mary in a tradition of divine birth. So she wasn't the first, last, and only woman to do this. But we even know that from Christianity, because we know that Elizabeth, what turns out to be her aunt, gave birth to John the Baptist this way. We know that Sarah in the Bible gave birth to Isaac this way. So I had already wanted to start writing about Mary when I was doing my dissertation, but then I realized this dissertation is getting way too long. It was already 600 pages. I had to cut it somewhere. I said, all right, I won't write about Mary now, but I'll start teaching about this in slideshows and things like this. So I did that, when the books started coming out in 2000. Well, the dissertation came out in 2007, the first two books in 2009 and 10. But it's been all this time before I've really gotten to dig in and write the book about Mary that I already had gestating within me, because I was teaching about it. I had done all the research. And so it really kind of flowed in like a 4 or 5 month period. It was written, boom.
What were you doing in the meantime? Were you in your esoteric school and that type of thing?
That's right. That's right. So in 2010, the second book was published. And then after that, I continued to work in academia as like an adjunct faculty person at various California colleges and graduate schools, and even in the UK. But then at the very end of 2011 and beginning of 2012, I met a person who helped me start my own school. And that's when I kind of left academia, left teaching in formal classes. And I really started weaving all of my writing and research and teaching into more and more and more experiential classes for people. And that's the substance of Seven Sisters Mystery School. But my first classes, my first programs were on divine birth. So that was a really interesting way to sort of jump into it.
So what kind of ancient mysteries and religions and mythologies do you cover in your school?
Well, I would say, I focus mainly on the ancient Mediterranean world and Greece, Italy, North Africa. That's kind of where my leanings are. It's not like I'm totally knowledgeable about Native American spirituality and I'm coming from that, or, Buddhist traditions. No, it's more kind of what I know from my DNA in this lifetime, and I think a lot of my past lives. It's what I've discerned was part of this ancient tradition in Italy, in Greece, in England, in Egypt, and going on to the Levant coast, maybe where present-day Israel is, Iraq, that type of thing. When I really tune in, that's where I feel like I've gotten my information streams from. But then it's also kind of from the Akashic records. It's timeless. It's from the star nations, right? It's you're discerning perennial esoteric information that probably cuts across many traditions and is really not culturally bound either.
I wasn't too familiar with the other examples of this type of birth in Christianity. So because everybody seems to just focus on Mary and that,
right.
But it's interesting to hear more. So maybe you can get into some of the things that, because it's hard to wrap your head around for some, especially for somebody that's not very religious maybe, or open to like these sort of metaphysical supernatural type phenomena. What are some of the things that you can say are evidence of this happening?
Right.
in the Christianity specifically.
Right. Well, in Christianity, you learn about in the Bible, in the New Testament, that right around the time Mary gave birth to Jesus, Elizabeth gave birth to John the Baptist. In the same way, she though was an older woman, while Mary was a younger woman. And John the Baptist went on to become sort of the baptizer of Jesus. He empowered Jesus. He kind of went a little bit before Jesus. And so those are the ones that people in Christianity will be mostly familiar with, and that they have heard of this idea of miraculous conception, right, through these two women. But then most people in Christianity also have probably heard about the Hebrew Bible and the founding father of Judaism, Abraham, whose wife, Sarah, had a divine conception also in her older years. And that was Isaac, and that's the famous story where Abraham tries to sacrifice Isaac, and Sarah's like, no, don't do it, So these are just some things that some people have heard of in the Judaism and Christianity, over the course of their religious learnings. What we find out in the gospel that I look at, which is not part of the official New Testament, it was rejected by the Catholic Church at the Council of Nicaea, but it was beloved by the people of early Christianity, and it forms the foundation of a lot of the Catholic feast days, strangely, like Mary's presentation in the temple or Mary's birth. And what this suppressed gospel, known as the infancy gospel of James, tells us is that Mary herself was divinely born by her mother, Anne. Okay? So Anne is not somebody we hear about a lot in official Christianity, but you might see her referenced in the stained glass in, such and such church. And it's like, where did they hear about Anne? Well, it's from this gospel. This gospel gives that information as well as details about how Mary conceived Jesus that are not in the New Testament, right? So these are some of the things that I explore. And to address your question about, people who are not esoteric or religious, basically, this is looking at high-level spiritual arts that are possible by people. I call them technologies. In the Eastern traditions, they call the ability to do counter-biological things siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I-E. A siddhi is an ability to do things like walk through a wall, not cast a shadow, live on air, cut off your hand and put it back together, die and then come back. And these miraculous abilities have been attributed to numerous holy people, like in India and that part of the world. So what I'm pointing out here in this book is that miraculous birth is yet another siddhi, but it's one that's only open to women by virtue of the fact that they have the womb. But there are various ways that we can conceive children, and the usual kind of sexual union is not the only way. So once we start, and also parthenogenesis, which is virgin birth, is possible in certain biological creatures, animals, naturally, and then also that has been induced through experiments, through the application of chemicals to eggs, like mice eggs and rabbit eggs and things like that, or electric shock. Okay, so parthenogenesis has been scientifically induced in certain beings, and this is looking at parthenogenesis as a high-level shamanic Siddhic art of women. So once you start opening the door to that angle on it, it maybe starts seeming not quite so weird, or at least you have a precedence or a context for it that doesn't just make us accept it as a weird thing that we have to go on by faith alone.
And like your earlier work showed, I mean, it's not just like those three people in Christianity or anything. It is all over. And
throughout the ancient Mediterranean world, for example, the mothers of Plato and Pythagoras were said to have divinely conceived these beings. Okay, the mother of Alexander, the so-called great Olympias, is said to have conceived Alexander through one of the types of technologies of divine birth. These women did not do it through parthenogenesis, which is like the woman herself becomes androgynous, male, female, and conceives, but they were mating with beings in the astral plane, non-physical male entities. So this is, I find, a continuum of these practices, and also I trace how this practice degenerated so that the women were eventually, they were being raped by these astral beings in their parthenogenesis process. And so then a different type of being would be born. Then later, the women would actually actively cultivate this practice of mating with an interdimensional male. And that would have been like the Olympiases of the world. But there are other stories, you know, even in Native American tradition, really all around the world, we have these divine birth stories. So it's not just by any means restricted to Mary or even the Greek priestesses, which is where, you know, I find a lot of evidence that mythological and legendary women, meaning historical women that we've forgotten were historical women, did this.
So you're talking like even incubus or sort of, you could say even demonic attacks or shadow people, or, I mean,
Yeah.
and also I guess the gods or the giants as well. Like it seems like there was maybe throughout time that might have changed, or I don't know the difference between them, but it seems
Yes,
like
definitely. No, really, Graham, what you're getting at is in the Bible itself, where it talks about the sons of God cavorting with the daughters of men and giving birth to the Nephilim. That's a clear example of a use of a type of divine birth technology, but not for positive means, because the Nephilim were not that great, you know. And yes, there can be all sorts of spirit attachments, sexual predations, and rapes that go on. We have many women contemporarily reporting astral intrusions during their dream time or during their medicine ceremonies, or, you know, other types of things that are unwanted. Some women have actually cultivated this. Some men have cultivated this. But, you know, at its most extreme negative level, we're talking about the demonic use of this divine birth technology to bring in the Antichrist type of energy, all right, the opposite of a Jesus onto the planet, and most likely those beings are or have walked around.
yeah, I was gonna kind of go down this path in a little bit, but it seems appropriate now, because you mentioned these traditions and the 7 or 8 women that would get together in their temples, that type of thing, and go through this process. I pictured this lineage maybe moving on in secret throughout the ages. And then is there also a darker lineage, you know, a sort of a more evil aspect of that, where there might be people trying to do what you just said, like bring out more.
I think there's a light, because we're in duality, there's always the path of light and there's the path of the demonic. So most likely there were numerous Rosemary's Babies types of situations going on. It may still be going on. It might be part of the Illuminati. You know, I can't say for certain, but I would intuit that. And yes, I think that this practice as a light practice also had to go underground, because it then would continue to be attacked by the dark forces. The rapes of the maidens and so forth are just one example of that back in the Greek tradition, right? Zeus raping the maidens. That's like an Anunnaki reptilian type of predation on these women. And as patriarchy grew thicker and the veils got thicker and the controllers got more controlling, anything of the nature of divine birth would have had to go underground completely. And we basically see this with Mother Mary, okay? They are kind of already, in a way,
freaking out about that
at a time where the public doesn't fully get or understand what's going on. There ends up being a lot of controversy when people find out that Mary is pregnant in this gospel. Even the men around her who are supposed to be elevated are going 3D on her and saying, "How did you become pregnant?" Slapping her around, you know. And then they have to be visited by these angelic beings who are like, "No, she's really pregnant by the Holy Spirit. You better shape up and support this woman," right? Because both Joseph, her partner, her consort, and Zechariah, Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist's partner, they went unconscious for a while, and they were doubting that this was real, that this was really happening. They had to be visited in dream time by the angelic forces. So then what you have is that when this birth took place, Mary had to go on the run, and so did Elizabeth, because once those controllers, namely, the reigning, not Pontius Pilate, but the other one, Herod, the reigning reptilian rulers, once they get wind of this, they're like, caw, caw, where is that child? Eradicate, if they had drones in that era, boom, these kids would have been gone, but they didn't have that tech, so they were looking for them and killing all of the children under 2 years old to be able to eradicate these beings that were high level that were coming on. They did not get eradicated, though. Mary hid Jesus in a trough, and Elizabeth hid John the Baptist in a mountain cave. Okay, and they escaped, but it was a very dangerous time for the Holy Family. And even the writer of this gospel, the supposed James, who might have been one of Joseph's sons from a previous marriage, said, I've had to go into hiding to write this.
Regardless of how it happened, whether it was through like the spiritual sort of interdimensional incubus type thing or the divine birth itself, do they have to be virgins at the time? Like, has there been any instances of pregnancy through like shadow man or incubus type stuff if they're not virgins?
Well,
I'm going to have some weird questions like that.
No, it's a great question, because it is the exact point of it all. This is, Mary's virginity has been used as a weapon, by certain religious institutions and as an oppressive force for all women, saying, if you want to be good, you have to be a virgin. No, the point is that Mary needed virginity as a part of the technology to do this, if she wanted to do it in a high level, because she needed to be sovereign so that she could completely connect with divine source creator herself in her high spiritual elevated way, without the influence of another male's energy or karma. It's just the way it was. It was understood that a virgin conceiving in the right way would bring in the highest level being. And that's why, through this technology. Now, there was an accompanying tantric, a high tantra, that would involve the male and female having union in a very high way as well. So you have Parthenogenesis on one side and high tantra on the other, but then you have this droop where both of them degenerate into, the rapes of the maidens for Parthenogenesis, and then the lower technologies of like Egypt to bring forth the pharaohs. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are going on here. Usually, what I understand is that even the tantric priestesses, though, reserve themselves sexually for this ritual activity. They were like otherwise virgins, except for these times when they would engage in this way. There's just something about the sovereign womb that allows for a particular type of energy to come in.
What about the connection with the male energy where they would leave for 40 days, 40 nights, go on some sort of vision quest or, to walkabout to sort of but it was part of that, the whole ceremony in a way, right? Maybe informally or maybe sometimes.
You're talking about the men?
Yeah.
Say it again. Say your question again.
Like how they had to leave. Some of them left for 40 days, 40 nights. Like it wasn't just a one example. It was kind of like there's multiple times where you made a note that the men go on this sort of quest as well during the time to maybe as part of the ceremony.
Yeah, good question, right? When Anne conceives Mary, her partner Joachim goes away on a vision quest. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Probably a 40-day, 40-night thing. We don't know how long, but he's doing his own energetic work out in the desert, while Anne is in her garden by her laurel tree working with the higher dimensions, getting pregnant, but he's supporting her energetically. Okay. That's my analysis of the situation, which is also supported by somebody named Claire Hartsong, who's written these channeled books called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, and Anna, Voice of the Magdalens. She discerns that these men would lend their spiritual essence to the process, not their sperm. With the case of Mary, she was even more solo, though, because Joseph went off. These men were never the conjugal husbands of these women. They were guardians, protectors, and supporters, energetically and financially. Joseph was assigned Mary in this gospel by divine synchronicity to be her guardian, but he did so reluctantly, because the situation is seen as a kind of marriage, even though it's not an official marriage and it's not a sexual marriage. But she was so much younger than he was that he was like embarrassed about this whole thing, and he had to be really induced by an angelic being in his dream state to come back into his role. When he went off to do a carpentry project. He was not lending his male essence to this process. So it was really all Mary, beginning, middle, and end, working with Mother Divine to do this. In the case of Sarah in the Hebrew Bible, there's some indication that Abraham may have been involved in this energetic level with her as well for that conception. These are somewhat mysteries, like the information has been veiled or it's gone missing, and I'm discerning here through use of academic research, but also my intuition. And I think that's what's going to come forth over time, is people are just going to continue to access the Akashic records to pull forth this information.
Yeah.
So would she have been considered a witch at the time? Would that have been considered witchcraft?
No, she would have been considered a very high-level priestess. Witchcraft has the implication of there being some lower-level energies involved, and that would not have been Mary at all. She was of the absolute most impeccable. She was the highest holy person who ever walked the planet, according to Sri Kaleshwar, the late Hindu saint, who did a lot of study about her. Even higher than Jesus, really. And you would have to be able to bring someone such as Jesus in, right? This is talking about women at their apex of power. Mary achieved it after many, many lifetimes. Witches have some of that power. And I think, though, it really depends on the witch. You could have had very high-level, high vibrational witches, and you could have had lower level, lower vibrational witches. And really, honestly, the same would be for the word priestess. You could have your high level and low level. So I don't mean to cast an aspersion over the word witch, but that is not something that would have been used for Mary in any way.
It seems like it's also something that came about more towards the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, or a little bit after that sort of the area around 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, it's a term that came up later. I mean, at the time of Mary, it would have been like sorceress or,
right.
That kind of thing. You get into, and, I'm sure there were people who might have called her that, like, wow, what kind of magic is she doing, right? She may have had aspersions from people, but, those of us who believe we're understanding this at a deeper level know that she was a very high vibrational being.
Let's stick with the process then, because it's pretty fascinating. So there's groups of, like, the way you describe it in your book is fascinating, because they're going to stay virgins for as long as possible throughout this. They're in a temple with a bunch of other initiates or adepts or whatever. Yes. I can't remember exactly the word you use. And then there's some processes, or maybe other, like you could say, technologies, like sound, for example. And even I was thinking about Lynn McTaggart's The Power of Eight, because you do mention there's 7 plus Mary for that one. And I mean, Lynn McTaggart's come up with 8 as being a pretty relevant number for intention work and manifesting stuff.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, they were doing it. They were a group of 8. It was Mary plus 7 virgins from the lineage of David. So there was a lineage involved. And one of the women, it seems, was also Elizabeth, that mother of John the Baptist. I contend that both Mary and Elizabeth conceived in the same
Ceremony?
divine birth circle ritual.
Yeah,
Is it on
and maybe they were
purpose?
all trying. Maybe they were trying to do all of them together.
I
So
think
it wasn't
so.
intentional. It wasn't
Yeah.
like they were doing
Yeah.
something else, and they're like, "Oh,
No.
shit.
This is like something they've been practicing.
No, they've been planning.
They're super intense the whole way through their life, getting to that moment. Like this is
Getting
a
to that moment.
serious discipline to get to that
It's a
point.
serious ritual. It's the highest, most serious ritual you could ever have on the planet. It was divinely timed. It was orchestrated with the stars. It was
That's right.
connecting women to one another. And what I believe is that prior to the ritual, what you have is that Zechariah, the priest of the temple, has the women pull threads. And the threads that they pull, the color thread probably designates what role they were to take in the ritual. Mary and Elizabeth both pull the scarlet thread, but Mary also pulls the purple thread, the royal thread. So she's got, the root chakra red and the crown chakra purple. She's the one who's going to bring the highest holy avatar, and Elizabeth is going to bring the one who helps the avatar arise to his status and his awakening. So I think that it's that red thread that they pull that indicates, okay, these are the two women who are going to conceive in this ritual. There you go, red thread. A lot of women wear the red thread around their wrist as perhaps a hidden memory of this type of women's circle work, and that this is the highest dimension of it.
Funny, when I read that, I thought right away of the crown and the root chakra. With those two colors.
Absolutely.
And then I couldn't believe you had it on the next page. I was like, oh, wow.
Well, so you were already discerning. I mean, that's the thing. It's like people have intuitive responses to this material, so that's good. I mean, you're tapping your own knowing. And in terms of the other techniques, I do talk about that. As you mentioned, they were using the light interface. And Claire Hartsong talks about that in her channeled books, that these were light conceptions. The women are working at a high quantum level. They had to be. They had to be working where light is the intersection of consciousness, matter, and love. Okay? So all of that wrapped in is what they're working to bring in and weave into their wombs. The metaphor for what they were doing was weaving. So it looks like they were just weaving a temple veil, but I get under that symbolism and say, oh, they were weaving all right, but they were weaving DNA. They were weaving, the quantum materia into physicality. They probably were also using sound technologies. It could have been mantras. It could have been light language. It could have been tonality. They were working in harmony with these angelic forces. They were using heat and sexual energy, kundalini energy. It was not devoid of passion. They had to generate the sexual desire within their bodies for this to happen. So that starts getting a little
and transmute it
there for some religions that are like, whoa, virginity does not equal sexuality. Well, in this case, it does. You see, I'm flipping the whole thing right side up based on this research that I've done and how I'm able to cross-reference everything that goes on in that gospel with things that I discovered in ancient Greece, and it all suddenly makes sense.
Yeah, Napoleon Hill talks about transmutation of sexual energy as being one of the most powerful tools of manifestation.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this, you have the woman doing it within herself. So she becomes the whole source creator being. She becomes the male-female herself. I mean, it's like, it blows your mind when you really think of it.
Yeah, I mean the sound is critical too, and the light. I mean, my friend's mom was humming or doing a toning exercise in a dark restaurant, and she created a spark of light. So something happens with it. Must have been so resonant, and once the frequency gets to a certain point, sound becomes light.
Sound
So
becomes light.
imagine being so well versed and practiced in that in the ancient temple that you could maybe focus that light into the egg.
Ooh,
That's
maybe
right.
that's why there's no torches in the pyramid. They just had some slaves or some people. Just it was their job to just light
That's
the
right.
place
It's
up.
kind of like in Dune. Right? They're using that sound technology, and incidentally, Dune has a divine birth story. Okay, go check it out.
Which one? I read them all.
There's a huge Dune fan. He just read them in the last few years.
The first Dune book. If you go back now and look at it, the main character's mother is a divine birth priestess. That's how she's conceiving. Go check it out. So I love what you're saying, Graham, about sound becomes light. I had never consciously thought of it before. I'm going to have to credit you. Yeah, this is where the dualities become one, the polarities reverse, sound becoming light. That is the technology right there. Okay, you heard it for the first time on your show.
Yeah,
All
well,
right.
my friend's mom, like she's into singing bowls and all this kind of toning and all that, and they saw the spark of light when they were humming. I mean,
it's like a match.
yeah,
it's like striking a match. So I think
when
that's profound. This is like a missing link. That's why I love these interviews, because a lot of times information comes through, and that seems right on to me.
and imagine they're practicing this for years and years and years, for decades, for generations. They've been practicing this. Without all these other distractions. I mean, imagine how much power they have spiritually to manifest.
That's right.
Light and
That's
sound
right.
or whatever in the temples, and 8 of them together focusing on it. I mean,
that's right. When you have the women working at a very high level, right? So these women were like the highest impeccable people, which is a rarity right there. But because Mary herself was already divinely born from Anne, she was an avatar. Okay? Because the purpose of this is to bring in an avatar, a very high holy, high vibrational being. Mary was already that from her mother, and then she's doing it, bringing in Jesus. It's like double holiness. She had high ethics. She had high abilities. She was trained by her mother first, from the first 3 years in her mother's bedroom, and the virgin priestesses would come and train her. And then at 3 years old, she was brought to the temple and continued the rest of her training until she was anywhere between 12 and 16 years old when this conception happened.
fascinating. What about modern people? Like, when after reading your book, and we were talking to somebody the other day about Sir Francis Bacon, for example, who the Queen Elizabeth, Anne, I think is also her name, which is interesting. She claimed him as like a stepson, or like he was so close to the royal family that she kind of considered him almost one of her sons. And I started to think about all these people from history, like Paracelsus or Count Saint Germain or Sir Francis Bacon, Cagliostro. Like, I mean, because there's something about these people that are they're at a level that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
A human being, like at the sort of level of maybe like a Jesus or a Buddha or something,
Yes, and I think that is true. And it may be that they came in through divine means. Certainly there's stories about this with Buddha. There's stories about this with Lao Tzu. But I know you're talking about like the Western esoteric tradition. Paracelsus, if I'm recalling correctly, there are some stories in there. Was he working with the homunculus?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So see,
And
here's
the alchemy and all that. And that's why I was thinking that's sort of more proof in a way, or evidence that this can happen, right?
Here's the thing about alchemy. It's the male's attempt at divine birth.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
All right? Because they don't have the physical goddess-given womb within their body that is the only vessel that will allow an ensouled being through, which is why the gods are always raping the goddesses and women. They still have to have a womb in order to bring an ensouled being. I'm sorry, no amount of cloning is ever going to replace that, and that's what's bugging the hell out of them, these controllers. And they're trying every which way to create an artificial womb.
Do you think that do you think that the secret schools made it through all the way? The lineage made it through all the way? Like, do you think there's some people practicing this now somewhere?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm putting it out there. I am asking to know whether there is an unbroken lineage of divine birth. I put it out there. If it is meant for me to know in safety and in confidence, that information will be brought to me. It may not be mine to know in this lifetime, and that's fine. If there are people doing it, blessings to you. You know, if you need to still keep it under secret wraps, great. That's fine. Yeah. But yeah, that homunculus thing was very interesting to me when I was first doing the research on divine birth in ancient Greece. I really went far and wide and deeply with that whole thing. And I don't know if Aleister Crowley was in on it or whatever. But anyway, the alchemy, the hermetic vessel, is meant to be the womb. That's what they were trying to do. Forget gold, although gold is really a high vibrational thing. They were trying for that too. But they haven't really been able to create gold. That's only the goddess is able to do that. And they haven't really been able to create an ensouled being. Only the womb, meaning the goddess, can do that. Now they're trying as they, like the Dickens, but I decree that they will not do it.
Well, they might through CRISPR.
CRISPR? Well, in Dune, they just turned the Reverend Mothers into axolotl tanks and grew babies in them. But now I think Dune still had the guy, though, and she was just able to make herself get pregnant. I don't remember.
I'll have to look into that a little bit more. There's an implication there.
There could be an implication, but yeah, they definitely say Paul is the lineage of Duke Atreides.
Yeah, but you know, that's why they say Jesus is the lineage of David. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck that shit. He is the lineage of Mary and the goddess. You know what I mean? Like, they always have to insert this stuff in that is not relevant. You know, they always have to give credit to the male line because it's so threatening.
Oh, I see.
It's so threatening to patriarchy that we can't even have these memes. Like, look at even Dune. I mean, it can't even do justice to the divine birth thing. It has to make it look like he's coming from that lineage. He's not. He's coming from his mother's lineage, you know. So it's just a whole different thing. And it's not about erasing men at all. It's just that there are different methods of this technology that are used. The one I'm particularly talking about is the Parthenogenesis.
Yeah. Did they choose
that particular thing?
Did they choose between women and men? Like they Elizabeth had Anne or whatever the order was, and then Mary had Jesus.
Right. Anne had Mary.
Yeah.
Mary had Jesus. Yeah. Elizabeth had John.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
And your question was, do they choose?
Yeah, like, did they choose like, let's say Mary, for example, was she manifesting a male instead of a female? Okay.
Yeah, she was manifesting a male. Anne was manifesting, okay, I'm just channeling right now. Anne was manifesting a daughter so that she could have the highest level womb on the planet to do this.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Mary was manifesting a son because, as Sri Kaleshwar says now, crediting him, she saw the controllers that were operating on planet Earth, and just think about, she was in the middle of the Roman Empire, dear God. And she saw how horrific the Earth was going, in what a horrific direction the Earth was going. We needed an avatar to help clear this stuff up. But according to Sri Kaleshwar, which this is going to be more in a second book that I write about Mary, but because in this one, I feel like it was enough to just focus on her gospel and get that out. And she was working with Mother Divine, saying, what are we going to do about this earth plane? And Mother Divine was saying at the time, you cannot be the savior. You cannot be the clearer of this energy because you are the female. The female is the nature. you need a male energy to come in and help with this. So that's how she decided to conceive a male, and that male was Jesus, because he carries the Shiva energy to go chop, chop, chop.
It seems like coincidentally, or maybe not so much ironically. I mean, I feel like the suppression of the female and the female energy, like you talk a little bit about it in your book, but it seemed to happen at that point.
Yeah. I mean,
Like-
it was already happening, but it just was getting worse and worse and worse. Like, really, King Arthur came in a divine birth. Okay? And that, to my mind, was the last legitimate royal divine birth on the planet. It already had some trouble about it because there had to be some subterfuge around his mother Igraine, bringing him in that way. But after Arthur, the veils really became thick, and the ending of Camelot was a great tragedy for a lot of people, because it meant the ending of the divinely born kings and the beginning of the demonically born kings. That's what I'm channeling right now. Now, there is something about that transition to Arthur, which is why Lisa Renee is talking now about the return of Arthur in the Albion, you know, which he means like the plasma of the earth, and that is returning.
Along with the feminine?
Yes, along with Guinevere, the Guinevere energy, and the Sophia Christ. Okay, so we're in a process of a very intense rebirth.
In New Age terms, that Aquarius?
Yeah, that would be one way to put it, right? We could call it Aquarius. We could call it New Earth. We could call it fifth dimension. Okay.
Wow. I mean, we're at such an interesting time on Earth right now, too.
Yeah, and I mean, a conversation of this nature, because, you know, you guys are carrying codes, more information can come through the three of us, right? Not all my interviews go like this. It's kind of stays at a certain kind of level, but we're like co-creating actually here.
Wow. I get the shivers like twice now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I could see you too. You both went whoo a couple of minutes ago when you were like, holy crap, you know,
Yeah.
this is more than we bargained for. This is great, but you know, we didn't even know we were going to go to these places together.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, what else do you, I mean, where do you want to go from here then with this?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's just take a minute and see what wants to come in. And if anything, you know, pops into your mind, let me know. But so really, ultimately, this is not about power. It's about love. Because what we've been talking about a lot seems like it's at the level of power. And it is. But really, this is all about bringing in the love energy, and the love energy as the healer and the remedy to all of this controlling business that's been going on the planet. And really, Mary's name means divine love, if you break it down into its Egyptian form, Mary. And Jesus was all about love as well. But a kind of a fierce love, you know, a love that's united with wisdom and that's grounded into the earth. So we want to always remember that's where we're coming from, that's who we are, and it's where we're going.
Yeah, that kind of gets to the advice of what should we do during this time, you know? I guess love is the answer.
Love is the answer. You know, it's the substance and it's the goal. It's the road. It's the method.
Love's always the answer, I suppose.
It comes up so often, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's become a trite saying, but at the deepest vibrational levels, it's completely profound. and it's healing, and it flips and reverses everything, and it makes anything that isn't love fall away without it being a battle. Just by virtue of its own vibration, love is that.
What about more advice for people to get into that vibration or love a little bit? Maybe even for the males too, for the males.
That's right. Well, we all have a heart, and we all have a connection to the womb in one way or another. Men have the Nada Bindu point, which is a point of creation in their body. Women have that as well, and it leads you directly to Mother Divine's holy womb chakra. So it's not about men versus women. It's about, just there's some functions that the human womb can be responsible for. But in terms of coming back into love, we're still working on the healing on the emotional levels and the physical levels, right? We still have a lot of healing to do. So all of this has to go together, because we don't want to be 11:55 p.m. with spirituality. We're so high, but we're like 4:30 p.m. in terms of our emotions. We haven't like caught up with ourselves. So we have to keep doing this plain old psychological emotional healing. It's a really big time for that. And the work of Gabor Mate in bringing to light the trauma that has been perpetuated on us for hundreds and thousands of years, that's coming to light. So we're understanding what trauma is, how it affects us, that it creates negative behaviors, negative emotions, but it's not the people who are to be blamed. It's that we're in this whole field of it. So we need to have self-care, self-love, self-compassion, understanding, tools and mechanisms for lifting out this trauma, for reconstituting the chakras, for re-engaging our DNA at deepest levels, and for really activating the heart through whatever means necessary. Sometimes it's just getting quiet and calm. So all these tools and techniques we've been learning over the decades, meditation, medicine work, right? Breathing exercises, all of it is what will lead us to the healing and the opening of the heart.
Do you think that's why there seems to be, it seems like, in some ways, Christianity did a good job of stamping that out in some of the existing cultures, and then you've got China stomping their foot down on the, what was it?
Falun Gong.
Falun Gong, which is, the breathing and breath work and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So is that the just controlled demolition?
Yeah, controlled demolition by the controllers.
Imitating, the very thing they're destroying in some ways.
Progressive in science.
Yeah, they take it and they reverse everything. These are the controllers that are behind these institutions and these forces and these impulses, these colonizations, everything. It's not really even the people themselves or even the institution. It's the entities that are within, among, below, beneath, and through these institutions and people. That's what we also have to realize, that there is an interdimensional realm that is pretty fierce. And that's what's running this show. And we have to declare sovereignty and say goodbye to those energies.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that. The last couple of our guests have mentioned, Gabor Mate and the entity behind the controllers. And it really seems to be coming up a lot.
It's coming up a lot because we're all getting hip to it. We're awakening. We're converging. And these synchronicities that happen, people are saying multiple, the same thing, multiple people. It's giving it validity. It's helping people to take it seriously and look at it and say, what does this mean for my own life?
Yeah. Can you get into your school a little bit and how people can learn more about all this through your school?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. People can check out sevensistersmysteryschool.com. The 7 is written out, SEVEN. And there you will be led to courses that are relevant to the material I've been talking about regarding Mother Mary, regarding the Holy Womb, regarding divine birth teachings, and also regarding an oracle training that I'm offering again for the first time in 3 years, which will allow you to develop qualities of seeing that the great female masters and male masters have had on our planet. I provide some tools that help you in a grounded and safe way be able to open your knowing to and your connection to divine Sophia oracle wisdom. And for those who want to do more intensive divine holy womb work, it's the holy womb chakra teachings. And there are many free offerings that I have, videos. I work one-on-one with people. I have blogs, and there's just a lot of content that people can discover by going there. And of course, my books, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, which is available on Amazon in print, ebook, and Audible, which I really recorded it mindfully to be able to transmit energies through it. And then my first 2 books, The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece and Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity. They're sold wherever books are sold. Amazon, Inner Traditions website, my publisher of the newest book, BarnesandNoble.com and indie.org.
Awesome.
Didn't they name that artificial intelligence Sophia?
Yeah, they probably did. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's so many weird names like that. Even all the rockets and a lot of this high technology stuff is getting named like these ancient.
They co-opt it.
Yeah, exactly.
The names of the companies,
Yeah.
the names of the tools and technologies. Drone. I mean,
ISIS.
Oh my gosh! It's always usually creating a reversal.
Yeah,
a reversal
it seems
grid
like it.
on a very high vibrational element or aspect.
There's also a space on your site there. Is that still going? There's a male sort of shamanic teaching in there as well.
Yes,
5
I do.
sessions?
For men, I give sessions to men as well, and I have a course called Cultivating Your Shamanic Power as a Man. That's just some good basics there.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
So, and some of the other courses men have taken, and I have a whole back library of courses that I don't even put on the website visibly because it would just overwhelm people, But if you get on my email list this summer, we're going to be offering some of those at a discount, and those are really great topics. About the male gods. I have one called "Gods We Trust," and it's about Jesus, Asclepius, and Dionysus. Right? So I've been doing a lot of esoteric teaching over the years. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thanks so much. Darren, do you have any other questions?
You.
No, yeah. Thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, that's
You're
great.
welcome. Graham, Darren, it's a pleasure to be here, and blessings to your listeners.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Thank you, Marguerite. Have a wonderful evening, and
Thank
let us
you.
know when the next book comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
Will do.
Yeah, we'll have you
All
back
right.
on. We'll get an update.
Okay.
Thanks.
Love to you both.
See ya.
And that was our chat with Marguerite. What'd you say?
Well, that was one of the more profound chats I've had in a while. That was pretty intense.
Opened a lot of,
Yeah.
connected a lot of dots.
Opened a lot
for
of
you.
chakras.
Were your chakras are open?
I don't know. I had
Careful.
the shivers a
Careful.
couple times. Got a little all glossy-eyed there even.
Oh boy. Oh boy. We could have a cry
It's
on
like
the podcast.
I felt like the drums at the Elton John concert were going off.
Don't cry on the podcast. It's gonna seem so inappropriate when I burst out laughing. And won't
that
even
was-
be on purpose.
No, that was good. I mean, honestly,
There was some mic problems.
I'm really, I think it was coming from her,
Coming
her
through her
laptop. I
laptop,
mean, at
yeah.
first I thought it was only me, but then it started to do it with you a little bit, and it could be the tone of our voice. But yeah, we got to make sure that people have their their earbuds in just for that. Like that was the real reason why there.
That's why.
Something's activating our mic when we're not talking. So when
Well, we're
we do
both
talk,
coming
it
out of our
goes through.
laptop or
Yeah.
our computer.
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't matter with people.
Depends how good it is, I think.
But I was so interested because I thought you might be skeptical of this topic, and then man, as we got through it, I knew I kind of saw you coming around a little bit, and the Dune thing, and just the,
Did you? You saw me coming around?
Yeah.
No, I think you projected that.
I felt it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
When your chakras are lighting up?
Yeah. No, honestly, I feel like
the
it's
sexual energy thing kind of made some sense with the Napoleon energy,
Yeah.
but I don't know. She's gonna have a hard time disproving Paul being part of the line of the Atreides. I mean, he was the first male Reverend Mother, I guess. I mean, that he's got the powers of the Reverend Mother, but I don't know. Divine birth for Paul is a stretch, I think. Plus, Paul's only one book, and then there's the whole rest of the series, which in the end has more to do with Duncan, Idaho than anything else.
Yeah, I haven't read it in so many years. I think I read it when I was a kid.
All 8 or just the first one?
No, just the first one, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of Dune.
I just love how Dune's been coming up so much lately, dude. I don't know why. Why is that?
I don't know.
Is it just in people's consciousness? Or?
Maybe all the people are finally reading Dune, and so it's flying around. All the people I've been telling to read. I've heard from a few people they've read it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what's going on.
No, I've heard from people outside of like your influence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a lot.
If she's outside my influence.
Yeah.
Well, the movie's coming out
Man,
too.
I love this episode.
The movie's back to coming out in October, I think.
I feel like checking out her shamanic course there. I might look into that a little bit more.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you're just not working. You can do these courses.
No, I'm working all day. I work 7 days a week.
Go work in Costa Rica for a week.
I work 7 days.
Retreat.
Oh, that's what you were trying to think of the other day. Graham's gonna be off doing all these courses.
I'm working, bro. I'm working.
I'm working.
7 days a week.
I'm a shaman now.
Fan lower, boy. Big thanks to Marguerite for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Of course, even bigger thanks if you're one of the remote few who, not remote, but 1 in 100, maybe 2 in 100 on a good day, that choose to support the show. Gramerica.ca/support. If you can, when you can, sign up for that monthly. It really does help, makes a huge difference, helps Graham work 7 days a week on stuff that's important, like podcasts and audiobooks, and not just droning away at some corporate soul-sucking factory or whatever. So Gramerica.ca/support. If you can, when you can, sign up for that monthly. If you're getting some value from the show, adding some value to your life in some way, you decide what that is. Gramerica.ca/support. There's a bunch of other ways in the show notes you can help that don't cost any money. You can do that right now. Share the show, review the show, join the chats. Buy some swag, maybe. Gramerica.ca/swag. Facebook this shit. Tweet this shit. We're shadow banned on everything.
Oh,
so
even Instagram's not working for me now.
you guys got to spit that shit out. So yeah, Gramerica.ca/support. Share this shit. We love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. Still live. Thanks for tuning in to the live show, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, Thomas Ramirez is tearing it up. I hope you are getting paid good money for this, guys. Trying to trick people into buying scams has huge karma cost in life. Not that Bunny can buy, for goodness.
What's he talking about?
I don't know.
Anyways.
Gramerica.ca/support. Sorry, Thomas. I hope you have a better night than you had so far. I'm surprised you hung around for the whole thing.
We're not worried about karma, buddy.
Not worried about karma. Not one bit. We love you guys. We'll be back next week, Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
Saturday 11?
Yeah, I think so.
Who's on that day?
It's UFOs and underground bases and crop circles.
This isn't Whitney Webb week, though, is it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, UFOs, crop circles, and underground bases at Saturday at our time at 11. Yeah.
All right, guys. Saturday, 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll be back. Have a good night. Have a good week.